So we had covered organization. Moving to the environments part. So environment obviously is a runtime context for API execution. We need to deploy a proxy into an environment in order to consume it and consume it, run that API code and call it from somewhere. So in the environment, first thing will be the deployment. So the proxy, shared flow, and extensions, all of them, they must be deployed on the specific environment in order to be consumed. Until unless they are deployed to an environment, you cannot call them. Then but proxy name, shared flow name, and the extension name, all of them must be unique on the whole organization level. So their name must be unique. However, the deployment is done on the environment. Then in terms of connectivity, so to connect from client to Apg, so in order to connect client to Apg, we have to create virtual host. So virtual hosts are created in the environment. Okay, in the virtual host, you specify the protocol, HTTP or HTTPS. You specify the domain name and you specify the port. And then for this thing, by default, for Apg hosted cloud. So in Apg, whenever we are using Apg hosted one, even in our trial org, even in our trial account, Apg will provide two virtual hosts in every environment. One is known as default, another one is known as secure. So the default is on HTTP and secure is on HTTPS. And they use a standard domain name. And the pattern is your org name hyphen environment name dot apg.net. So these are automatically created and provided by Apg. And for HTTPS, Apg has its own wildcard certificate, so they can use that and create it. And the customers usually create one or more C names for that apg.net address. So we have to get more than like we can get multiple C names, and we can create our own virtual host. So in the paid org, you're allowed to add more virtual hosts. You can create more virtual hosts for your various environments. So and for your dev, you can have API dev dot company.com. For API test, you can have API-test.company.com. For API sit.company.com. Kind of this thing you can have. For each of domain, you have to create a virtual host. So in the virtual host, it will allow you to allow the request to come to that particular domain. So that is on the virtual host side. So virtual host to host the Apg, to put your Apg host name. So this is where your Apg host will be connected or will be listening. And then for connecting to target, we have the concept of target servers. So target servers we create so that we uh, uh, create a configuration for the backend host, backend port, and any certificates required for backend connectivity. Those things are specified in the target server. And Apg allows the load balancing feature on the backend calls. We will cover this thing later in the detail as well. We will have a separate section for target server. We will cover all these things what we do. And then Apg has the key store and trust store. So key store and trust stores are used to store TLS certificate, private keys, and all this stuff. So key store will store the certificate and trust store on the Apg layer, and trust store will have the certificate of the either backend or most likely the backend or third party server where we are going to call Apg. Which we are going to call from Apg. So the other party. So key store is the Apg thing. A trust store is for the other party which we are going to call from Apg. So so those things are there. We will cover these things, all of them in detail later on. This is just as I said previously, just to get an idea about these terms, that what are these terms. And then in the environment there is configuration, where in the environment you can have key value maps, and in the key value map you can have environment level configuration. So that is the most common thing, that consider your key value map as your equivalent to a properties file. In any programming language, we have the properties file or config file, which we create on the base of the environment. So for dev environment, some information will be same, some will be different. For test and QA environment, some will be same, some will be different, and all those stuff. So usually we get a properties file, we read all of those, and yeah, on the runtime these will be used. The same concept Apigee has for key value maps. So the environment level properties, anything, configuration, all the configuration for that specific environment, you put in the key value map. Then we have the concept of flow hooks. Flow hooks will allow the shared flow to be attached to all the proxies of the environment. So if you want a shared flow to be executed for all the proxies on the environment, then you can create a flow hook. So it is I mean, this is a very rare scenario. You don't need that particular shared flow for all the proxies, because something might be different. But if there is a scenario which happens like that, you have to use that if you have to use that particular shared flow for all of them, then you can create a flow hook. So that is used. So sometimes people think like security logging, those kind of things you can put in the flow hook. Then we have the resource file. So resource file allow sharing of the code between proxies in the environment. So again, in the environment level, you can create a resource file like a Java file or a JavaScript file, and that file can be referenced from any proxy within the environment. So those things also Apigee supports. So if you want to have a single file which can be shared across or referenced, you can do that. Now for runtime data, when the API calls comes, so Apigee has the feature of caching. So you can create a cache resources on Apigee, and those cache resources are used to cache any data. And caching obviously is like one of the standard features of Apigee, or it is a standard for any API gateway. Any API gateway, it is a standard gateway use case. So on any gateway, you can do the caching, and with the help of caching, you can improve performance to the great extent. So things which might take like even 4,000 milliseconds might even be done in 300 or 200 millisecond kind of this thing, or even 800 millisecond, you can do it in 40-50 milliseconds. So those kind of things can improve performance in a really great way. But caching should be done only if the response is not going to change frequently. So in some only a certain use case we can do caching. So Apigee has this caching, and cache resources are created on the environment level, and yeah. So these things are available on every environment, and we can use it. We will obviously study caching in depth, and we will also have a lab later on for caching, one of the advanced session later on. Now going through these entities, so these are for every entity, these are the scope of the entity. So you can see we see some entities are available on the org level, like users and roles are available only on the org level. Developer application products are there on the org level, and you can see virtual host, target servers, key store, trust store. These are available on the only environment level, so you can create only in the environment level. Open API specs are available on the org level. However, there is a plus sign like this. This means this feature is available on the Apigee cloud only. So this open API specs editor and all of this is not available on the Apigee private cloud, which is like hosted on the client or Apigee customer. So that is this feature is not on the on-premise version or private cloud version. It is only on the Apigee hosted cloud version. Then and yeah, so we covered these API proxies, revisions, shared flows, and all of this. So yeah, and things like resource files, caches, key value maps. So resource files, key value maps, these are available on the all the levels: org level, environment level, proxy level. You can put in there, and then data masks are yeah, available on the org level and proxy level. So all these entities, depending on when how you want to use it, you can do that. We will see these entities later on in detail, and we will use them on our labs as well, and in certain scenarios. So that is just to get an overview on the concept of organization and environments. Let me showcase you something just to, yeah, quickly. So here in the admin, all these things we can do here. So in the environment, so all these things which we saw in the environments, all these entities are available here on the admin environments. If you see my screen here, so like you have caches, you can create cache resource here. So here you can select the environment from here. For example, caches. And from prod you can come to test, and you can check these cache resources here. You can create cache resources. We will cover all of them in detail just to get an over idea. So here you have the flow hooks. You can attach. You can, from here you have to select the environment, and it will take you to that particular environment. So then we have the key value maps. So you can create your key value map and create the configuration on key value map. You have references like that. So this reference is for key stores and all those stuff. We will cover all of them, all of these things later on in detail anyways. The same thing we studied target server. So target server is the backend target configuration, and here you have key stores where you can upload the certificate, private key, and all those stuff on there. So yeah, this is all of these things are there on the environment level. Roles, users, we already saw it is on the org level, and yeah, proxy revisions are on the environment level. So all these things there. There is a virtual host also available on the environment level. So for every environment, you have to get virtual host. So here for prod, you have Apigee provides two. This is automatically done by Apigee. So Apigee creates two virtual hosts. Default is on port 80, which is HTTP, and secure is on port 443, which is HTTPS. And the format will be the org name. So my org name is Manish-eval. So that is the free org comes with the eval hyphen. So like evaluation org. So Manish hyphen eval hyphen prod, and one for HTTP, one for HTTPS, and the same will be done in the test environment as well, which the host name will be different. So for example, in the test, so here you can say hyphen test.apg.net in secure and default, both of them. So that way you can, yeah, create a virtual host and manage the environments and all those stuff. So yeah, this is just to get an overview. We will cover those things in the detail, and once we study more and more advanced topics. So yeah, now moving to the next chapter where we are going to understand the basics of REST. So we'll start with some basics of REST just to understand the concept and what are the APG recommendations in terms of the REST standards and protocols. So yeah, in the so REST stands for representational state transfer. So the first time this word REST was used by Roy Fielding in his PhD dissertation. It was in late 90s, 97 or 99, something like that. So it was the late 90s. This concept was used. And REST basically is not a standard. REST is a architectural style. So REST is a more of architectural style. It is not a standard. So REST uses plain HTTP protocol. So REST uses a standard HTTP. It is not a standard in itself. So in the REST, you use HTTP protocol to define your URL, define a method, and a resource paths and everything, query parameter, resource path. So use standard HTTP protocol to define how you are going to access a resource. So what will be the URL for that particular resource? What will be the pattern of the URL? What will be the method, HTTP method to make a call, and what will be the uh, things like how you do authentication, authorization, security, and all those stuff. So you are only using plain HTTP protocol to define all of this. So obviously, because it is based on top of standard HTTP, so it is a common and very easy to understand design pattern for APIs. So we call them RESTful APIs. So for all the practical purposes, basically anything over HTTP protocol is REST, as simple as that. So REST is nothing but an HTTP protocol, anything on HTTP protocol. So even your Java servlets or PHP program, anything PHP, JSP, ASP, all of them are nothing but REST. because you are using standard HTTP protocol to call those particular URLs. As simple as that. So, REST APIs communicate via standard HTTP protocol, and they adhere to the standard HTTP concept. So we here in REST we use plain HTTP, nothing else, just standard HTTP to define the URL, define the method, security, payload, everything, and use the standard HTTP protocol to communicate data. So in the REST we used JSON for payloads. So that is the most common way. However, REST is not just limited to JSON, but JSON is the most popular way to send data payload or data payload or data in a request and response. But it is obviously not the only way. REST supports XML as well. REST support your plain HTTP HTML form parameter as well. Anything. So as I said, anything over HTTP is REST, as simple as that. So your normal form parameter, like you want to submit a form parameter HTTP plain with form HTML forms and everything, all those parameter, everything is allowed in the REST. So REST APIs are self-documenting and easy to understand for a developer. Okay, so if you are following the best practices, so if you follow the REST guidelines and best practices, then your REST API is self-documenting by looking at the URL, by looking at the request response parameter, by looking at the authentication mechanism or other response headers, everything. Anyone who want to consume your API, that person will easily understand. So that is the benefit of REST. So if you are doing it properly, you don't have to worry about spending a lot of time on documentation. These API are self-documenting. Just by looking at their definition or schema and all, people should able to understand without much explanation. So how we in a standard REST API, so this is how it looks like. So for example, it is resource oriented. So whatever resource you want to expose, you give the name of that particular resource or entity. So and here you use the noun, so the name of the resource. So for example, you want to work on orders, you will their URL will be in the URL path, you will have /orders. If you want to get a single order, work on the order with a unique identifier, so you want to get a single order based on the identifier of that, then you give orders /id, so order and order id. So that will those that will be URL for the single order. So that is the defining entity. Now which how you define what activity you want to perform on that entity. So in order to define the activity or operation that you want to perform, you also use HTTP method. So HTTP method, or we also call them HTTP verb. So HTTP verbs define how you are going to what operation you are going to perform. So if you want to do a retrieval in search or search operation on orders, then it will be get method on /orders. So /orders get, it will define that you are going to get an order. If you define /order id get, this means you are going to get or retrieve order based on the id, kind of this thing. You want to do a create operation, you do a post. So you want to do a /orders and post, this means it will be a create operation. So you are going to create an order. The because post uh, does not when you are doing the post, at the time you will not have a order id created, because you are going to create a new one. So in the post, the order id will not come, because in the post only will be /orders, because you are going to create an order. In the response of the post only, you will get an order id in the JSON. Then you want to either do a update, and also you can do a put and patch. These are for update, and delete is for removal. So these are the standard verbs, and they have the specific meaning. So depending on which activity you want to perform on a certain entity, you can use them along with your resources. So with the resource and method combination, you define what activity you are going to perform. So just by looking at that, any app developer should understand. So here is an sample quiz. So here we have /v1 customers in get. So what exactly are we trying to do here? So can you tell me?
Yeah, we are retrieving the customer's information.
Correct. We are retrieving customers, but it is a customer. So it will it be a object, or it will be a list?
It's always be list of objects, list of customers. Like when you
because
have the
because
when
you
you
see
have
on
the
the
names
customer
like
ID.
this, yeah,
Yeah, correct. So because we are working on the list here. Sorry.
it's a list of customers, right?
Yeah. So because we have not specified a customer ID here, so it will work on. It will give me the list of all the customers. It will give me list of all the customers here. So here is an example. So here is the example response. So in the entries, I will get list of all the customers. So list of objects because this is on all the customers. Then the same thing if I add a customer ID here. So V1 customers customer ID. Then what it will become? What it will do?
It comes only a 435 information.
But correct. So it will only give me that particular. So it will now be an object. In the object, it will I will get only the information about that particular customer ID. Yep. So in as a rest this thing. So for every resource type, we usually have two primary URLs. One URL is on the collection, basically like slash employees. So that will be list on the list of employees, and another URL will be on the single entity. And in another URL, you specify the unique identifier or the primary key or whatever you can call it. So you can call it a primary key or unique identifier or a resource identifier kind of this thing. So that, but that is a unique identifier on which we define in the resource. And Apg recommends using plural noun for collection names. So here we use the things like customers, employees, orders. We use things like in the plural nouns. I have seen some organizations and some companies, they prefer to have singular as well. So it is just a matter of their preference. However, both of them are right. It is not like there is nothing wrong in having a singular or plural. However, these are just yeah, this is just uh, a matter of preference or a recommendation. So Apigee recommends using plural noun for collection names. However, even singular is fine. You can yeah, based on places, because I have seen all of them. And another very important thing on the rest. In the rest, we never have anything right or wrong. Okay, because rest is all about guidelines. We don't have any rules in rest. So rest apis, they don't have any rules. So either it can be a good design or a bad design. So it is possible to have a good design or bad design. So if you are able to easily maintain, easily explain and all those stuff, then it is all good. If you are not able to explain based on the API specification, and you are not able to do the maintenance, you are not able to perform any API upgrade later on, then obviously it is a bad design. However, there is nothing called right or wrong. It is always about good or bad. So even if someone uses employee or something, then it is their preference. Both of them are perfectly all right, as long as they are able to have a consistency. It is all fine. So I mean, we don't really have any a wrong thing in rest. It is all about following the standard practices, and then being consistent with that. So in REST, we prefer concrete name over abstraction, and we should prefer standard names on over any internal company in terms. So for example, if you are giving a list of employees, because anyone who is going to consume your resource, that person might not be familiar with the internal company terminologies. So then they can use the term like you should use internal not sorry, you should use the generic terms which are standard term for anything. So for example, internally you might call your employees like API geeks, but in when you are defining a rest to get all the employees, you should use slash employees. You should not use slash API geeks in the path, because it is like your internal to company, people might not understand. So more and more you use generic names or standard names, it is better for anyone. If the person who's coming from outside and they want to consume, that person can easily understand all of this. And this is what we just discussed some time back. So here we are using HTTP verb for the create, update and delete operations. So for example, for resource type for slash dogs, so for slash dogs, if we are using post, it will create a new dog. If we are doing a get, which will do a retrieval, of all the matching dogs, we are doing put or patch, it will bulk update because it is slash dogs. We are not specifying the dog identifier, so it will do a bulk update on all matching dogs, and delete will do a bulk delete. Now, if we are doing dogs with 1, 2, 3, 4, in that case, the post is not valid. It will not do a create. We cannot do a create because we are already doing using a we are already using a dog identifier in the path, so we cannot do a create because that dog already exists. Obviously, that is the assumption. Then only we will have this ID. Then get will do a retrieval. Put and patch will do update if they exist. If that ID is still valid, they will do a update, or else they will throw an error. And delete will do a delete. So delete will just do a deletion on based on that identifier. So that's how we define the dogs. I mean, this is using HTTP verb, and the verb should not be part of the URL. When I say verb, means the activity that we are performing, action that we are performing. So many times, because of the programming background, people think that is user active. It is a good name for your Java method. However, is user active should not be in the path of any REST resource. So it should not be like there. So we should just use the proper uh, uh, proper nouns. Only nouns should be allowed. Nouns and verb should be on the HTTP verb. So the get or put or post, those should define what we are doing. And if we are not and if an API call that is not part of the standard CRUD operation, for example standard create update delete, and you still want to do, then you can use query parameter. So like you can use query parameters to define what activity you are going to perform. So like action equal to feed, for example, here in the post, dogs action equal to feed. So you are not doing a create operation, but you are doing an action where you are going to feed the dog, kind of this thing for that particular dog. So that is what so that those things we can do here, kind of this thing, but we should not use verbs in the URL. So URL should only have nouns, and URL should only have the yeah, and anything else you can do query parameter with all those query parameter. And obviously HTTP verb should define what activity you are going to perform. So the same thing that we saw the table previously. Now only thing is that with the dogs 1, 2, 3, 4, in the post you can perform a non-CRUD operation. So non-create update delete operation, create read update delete operation, and with a query parameter. So if you are using query parameter and it is not a standard create read update delete, then you can perform that activity, that is allowed. But a standard create you cannot do. Now there is another thing, when because we use both put and patch, both of them are used for update. Now but they both of them have their special meaning. Now patch is the partial update. So patch is used for partial update. So if you have like 20 fields, 15 or 20 fields, and you only want to update one field or two fields, then you can use patch. But if you want to do more than 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 field out of those 10, 15, then we use put. And whenever we are doing put, so in whenever we are doing a put, we should send the whole object. We should send the whole resource object in the request. So and whatever is updated, obviously in your code we will update that. So whatever is supposed to be updated in the code, we can update that particular field, and which is not, and the things which are not updated, those will not be updated. So put is like a replace kind of this thing, where we send the whole object, and patch is just a partial update. We only pick one or two fields which we are going to update. So that is a difference. So put is the normal proper update, this thing replacing, and patch is just a yeah, a partial update of one or two fields. So based on the requirement we can do that. Now a very another thing which is very important is then when we are using a parameter or filter. So when we are doing any filter or search, or those kind of operation where we have to filter based on parameter which are repetitive, means these are not a unique identifier. So those parameter which are not unique identifier, which are repetitive. For example, get a list of parks in a city, for example. So list all the parks within the city. So here the city will be city again, this thing, the park and everything, and city will be a city will be a kind of a repetitive thing for any all of them. So things which are repetitive, so those things, for those things we should put in the query parameter. So that's why, so for query parameters are defined like question mark. So we use question mark, and after question mark we write the query parameter. So in here example you can say get slash dogs location, because location might be multiple repetitive thing. Location is park, color equal to brown, and state equal to running. So these are the parameter. So these fields are not the key attributes. I mean, because these are repetitive, these are the normal attributes and all those stuff, standard attributes which can be used to filter. So here those attributes should be in the query parameter. And if you are using only by unique identifier and all those stuff, then those can be in the path. So if you want to get all the parks, then you can get parks. Then you want to get dogs for each park, then you can have park identifier and then dog. And then you want to get dogs, then you can have dog identifier. And yep, and then you want to do any filter all dogs for based on some filter query parameter and all those stuff. You can do all the complexity, because in the path you should only specify uh, the unique key attribute or the nouns or unique identifier, that's it. So entities are their identifier, that's it. And not the, yeah, attributes. So all the attributes or fields which are repetitive, those all of those should be in the query parameter. So like that. So the complexity should be behind this question mark. The question mark is like the separator between the path and the query parameter. And for multiple query parameter we use ampersand. So query parameter one is location equal to park and color equal to brown, and so you can use we use and to have a multiple query parameter. Another important aspect here is the partial responses. So that is something which is, I mean, I have not seen it that much, but it is quite useful. And this is something where people should, try to implement. Now, what happens, especially when we are developing mobile application, because mobile application uh, would have a sense, be more sensitive to the space, because the space issues will be there. So because obviously for mobile the space is not as much as any other thing. So what happens is the entities, when we are having like a user record or something like that, there might be like 15-20 fields, even more than that. Sometimes you get all the records of the user, all the big records might be there. Then data size, obviously, so whenever someone want to retrieve that, make a call, then the data size will be very huge. So you will have all these information, a lot of things, and sometimes not all the information is required. So you don't sometimes need all these 20 fields, you only need 4 or 5 fields. Then what we can do is, so if you want to query that particular record or you want to get a record, you can specify the fields in the query parameter. So for example, here I'm looking to get the detail about these employees, but fields can be specified in the query parameter, whatever fields we want. So the server should support this. So server should accept a query parameter name fields, and in the fields you can specify in the comma separated way. You can specify ID, full name, and all those stuff. So information which you only want, which you want, only those particular fields. So only those fields, and in the responses you can only specify those particular fields. So here you have ID, full name, and then geo dot latitude and geo dot longitude. So you have geo, in the geo you have latitude and longitude, like this. So that way the geolocation and name and ID. So only these fields are responded. We are not sending all 20 fields. So that way, like in that way, it works better for, especially for small devices, mobile devices and everything, where the space is major concern and all those stuff. And you are protecting your data also, or data from exposure. So you're not sending a lot of data, you are only sending the data which is required. So that way you are even securing the data, some part of data which can be sensitive, so you are not exposing those kind of things. So that way you can with the help of partial responses, you can add some kind of security as well, and also you can even do the you can work around with the space restriction. So you can make sure that okay, you are not sending large unnecessary data, so space is saved, and it can be, so it can be quite useful. So yeah, so that is something which we can yeah, work on, or we can do take care of when we are doing the REST design. So we can support partial responses if possible. So yeah, this is just a slide and all those stuff. So yeah, so now before we end, just we'll quickly cover this thing. This will be a very small part. So Open API specs is something that so Open API is the standard to define all the API design. It is not just on APG. For every company, they use Open API specification. So Open API specification is like a very easily human readable or machine readable, and you can define the specification using that. In the specification, you can define YAML or JSON format. So it supports both YAML format or JSON format. You can specify that, and you can define the API interface. So you can define the interface of the API. You can define all the paths which are supporting in your API, server name, base path, resource path, everything. And for every path, you can specify what are the operations. So operations is like your method, HTTP methods. You can have get, post, put, all those methods you can specify, and so that way you can define your API interface, or do the API design. And along with that, you can define the request and response format. So what will be the request format, what will be the response format. You can define every field, you can have example for every field, and you can have all the uh, headers and all, response headers, request headers, everything you can define for your APIs. You can have all this authentication detail, caching details, anything that you want to do, you can define that with Open API specification. Apigee has this Open API specs editor. We will use that to in our lab as well later on. So here in Open API specs, Apigee comes with embedded Open API specs editor, and also this is also used as a part of the live documentation, which is integrated with the Drupal developer portal. So sometime later on we will even cover. So Apigee comes with a Drupal module. In the Drupal, you can put these specifications in and use them for a live documentation, and internally they will call your Apigee, and a client can check your API consumer can check uh, the specification, what they can make a call, they can test a sample response, and they get feel of what the API request and response will be like, all those kind of things. And you can also Open API comes with there is a utility called Swagger Code Gen. With the help of Swagger Code Gen and all, you can even generate proxy stubs. So you can generate the stubs from them, and with the stubs you can create mock responses. With the help of these mock responses, you can work on your systems by the time your backend is available and all those stuff. So all these things can be done easily with the help of this Open API specs and all. So the Open API specs are completely, I mean, so this is like not just related to Apigee. So as I said, it is like a standard. It's now it is now a industry standard in terms of API design. So all the platforms, Apigee, MuleSoft, all the platforms which are there, all of them, they have started supporting Open API specs. Here, so just a brief history about that. So previously, we before 2010, we had things like WSDL. WSDL was for SOAP call. For SOAP APIs, we had WSDL. For REST, we had WADL. The WADL was the format, but WADL was very complicated. It was very complicated. It was difficult to understand. So they needed some pretty simple, straightforward way to define the APIs. So in 2010, the Swagger project was found, and in 2014, Swagger 2.0 was released, and the same Swagger was picked, and the same Swagger name was changed to Open API, and the Swagger 2.0 become Open API 2.0, and then in 2017 Open API 3 is released. So people use the term both Swagger, Open API, both of, because the Swagger was the original name. So people use the word Swagger or people use the word Open API, but both of them are have the same meaning. Apigee supports both Swagger 2.0 and Open API 3.0. So Apigee supports both of them. So whatever is your preference to define your API, you can use them and define your API specification. So all of them, this thing. For Swagger, you can go to there is a online editor as well. So people use this editor.swagger.io. This is the tool people use to define their Open API specification, Swagger specification. So like this, you can go to this website, you can define those Open API specification like that. So yeah. So you can so this thing, and if you want to study in depth on the Swagger, so you can go to their website. I think this is Swagger. I forgot the website name. Swagger, swagger.io. Okay, sorry. So swagger.io, you can go through all these tools. You can study, you can hear these tools, and there are resources available. You can go through the specification and the documentation. What is this thing? What all this specification you can cover both 2.0, 3.0. People prefer to use 3.0 nowadays, but some people still use 2.0, and all the specification schema, what you allow, what you don't allow, and all those stuff, how you can define a schema and everything. So we use this in the reference purpose. So when we need a reference for API design, we refer this. We can go through all of them. And when you open this editor.swagger.io, automatically a sample Swagger will be created for you. So you don't really have to worry about how do I start from zero. And of this thing, a sample is there. In the sample, there is a pet store Swagger is given. So pet store API, and you can check that Swagger pet store API, and you can then modify that Swagger and make it as per whatever you want to build. So you can yeah, build the Swagger and yeah, use that and build Swagger Open API specs and all. We will use Open API specs in our lab and later on, and then we will see how to use them and how to modify those things. So at the time, I think you might understand it even a little better. But yeah, so yeah, this is about the API design, and we will see usually when we are working with the Apigee, sometimes or a lot of times actually the backend teams present their Open API specification, because they will have their Open API specification for backend. Then we use that, you build our Apigee proxy, and then we create our Apigee or modify the same Open API specs to build our own Apigee Open API specs and Open API, so that and our Apigee can be then shared with the consumer. So this is a very useful way to design the APIs. And with Open API specs, this thing you can also, so this Swagger, so Open API specs is used by multiple stakeholders. So usually the API lead or API architect, they define the Open API specification. Then the developers who are building, developers will refer those to build their APIs. Then testing team will refer that and build their test cases. And then even when it is published on the portal, then the consumer who is going to consume the API, they will refer this as a documentation. And with this, you can even try sample call. So it has a mechanism to allow consumer to try sample call if you have specified your server and everything, and if you have specified your credentials and authentication mechanism, they can make a call using these Open API specs. They can get a real time feel on how the API request and response work, and it really helps them to understand your API, and it helps them onboard quickly. So it is very useful tool, and that is why it has become now kind of a de facto standard for API design.